Welcome to the Film Steins, the double feature podcast. Join us to unravel the interwoven experience of the continuous conversation of cinema. Take part in pairing movies with their cursed counterparts, movies that share DNA, or even pairing questionable duos by joining our Patreon at patreon.com/filmsteins. We offer tiers at the $1, $5, and $20 level, where the $5 tier grant the ability to request films to further the discussion. So grab some popcorn, sit back, and get ready to join the 100-year conversation. This is the Film Steins, where movies are more than just entertainment, they're an experience. And welcome back to another episode of the Film Steins. Thank you guys for joining us today. Today I am joined by my pinky friend, Lucy.
Hello, everyone.
Remember, you can join us every Monday and Friday for episodes on all of our free feeds, and every other Wednesday for an exclusive episode on our Patreon. Remember to leave nice comments, thoughts, and ideas on our Patreon as well. Come subscribe for $1. Come request a movie. Any movie will do. A Criterion Collection movie. Rate us on Apple Podcasts. We appreciate all the support. Thank you guys very much.
Are you stressed and filled with anxiety like I am? Maybe in a bit of pain from that car accident you had a few years ago? Well, the sponsor of today's episode, Hempville CBD, has us covered. They have the highest quality products created by chemists and doctors. Hempville carries everything from CBD to THC dispensary grade without those despicable dispensary prices. Order your Delta 8, 9 edibles and vapes along with the THCA flower and get free shipping when you spend $50 or more at HempvilleCBD.com. Check out the link in the description for more details.
But today we will be talking about Jane Schoenbrun's 2024 film, I Saw the TV Glow. Could you tell this was an A24 film?
Yes and no, but just visually, I could not.
Oh, that was sort of rhetorical, my bad.
Oh.
Because of the visuals, I thought with the neon and the level of moodiness, I thought it was kind of obvious, but maybe that's just me. That's what I take away from most A24 films. Of course, not all, but...
Yeah, and A24 has definitely evolved, that maybe if it would have been a previous film, they tend to be more gritty, and this did not have that grit that A24 films had in the past. But now anything could really go for an A24 film.
Sure, maybe they're evolving into just any sense of style is A24, because I was enjoying this sense of identity that they had, and I think it still is intact, this identity. Maybe a little ironic that we're saying this here, but there does seem to be even more of an emphasis on exploring what storytelling looks like in cinema. And I'll be the first to tell you that I was looking forward to this movie very much months back when it was revealed.
You were?
Sure, I like Jane's other movie, We're All Going to the World Fair. That was cool. The visuals are very fun. The surrealistic nature is a slam dunk. But I can't lie, I think this movie was a little lousy. There are some things I like about it. I like this element of identity by association. Mr. Melancholy, Man in the Moon, fun David Lynch reference. Really, I wouldn't say it's much more than a reference. Although I will say this film maybe touches in a post-Lynchian kind of mode. Because we all know that David Lynch was very into the obsessiveness we had with watching TV. The TV generation. David Foster Wallace obviously did too. And we get something very explicit here with two individuals being obsessed, I should say, with a show. We've all experienced it in some form or another. Book, video games, especially maybe. Music, maybe especially too. I was enjoying this adoption of how these elements, how these things in our lives, like this show, starts to displace your sense of self and is your identity. This is a very loud problem we see on the internet, at the very least. How gender and sexuality and your political alignment or whatever kind of belief or thing you're into are your personality, and there's not a lot of meat for others to chew on beyond these virtually immutable, at least at some point, kind of characteristics that no doubt add to the sum of you, but it's like some of these individuals get lost in themselves and get hung up on particular parts of themselves, and that is them. I don't know if that makes sense, but we've all seen these people who are a certain way and that is everything to them. And they are just defenders of that individual hill, and they will die on it constantly. And I'm not going to lie, this film sort of speaks to me in such a way that it makes me feel like Jane, speaking for themselves or others, is a call for help. But all in all, like the problem it addresses, I don't think it sees past its identity crisis and mostly falls flat. How do you feel about this movie, man? I know you weren't super into it when we were watching it, but it no doubt touches on something very familiar to all of us with fandom. So what do you think?
Yeah, I wasn't really a big fan of this movie. I didn't really get it. I didn't get what the point was. I get maybe the issue being brought up, but what do you have to say about it? Maybe. It was very weird and it was very chaotic, and sometimes I'm fine with weird and chaotic, but there's got to be something more to it than weirdness for just being different. And it just felt like it was one of those movies that hopefully you get something out of it and not maybe what the director is trying to say, but feel what you feel, get what you get, not necessarily trying to teach me something or maybe make me have these thought-provoking ideas, at least just for me. But the cinematography was awesome in this movie. I was surprised by how much I liked it. The score and the sound design were pretty awesome. The plot was meh. The dialogue was slow. I definitely had issues with the pacing and all these extra scenes and extra tidbits that I didn't feel were very cohesive to the story, so it kind of threw me out of what I was supposed to be watching. The characters were awkward. I'm not sure how I feel about their awkwardness and what that's supposed to mean. And the ending was pretty disturbing to watch, I guess I'll say that. But I guess if the point of the movie was to disturb me a little, it succeeded.
Yeah, I think this is a prime example of a film that should have been a short film or stayed a short film. It may have started out as one, but it's a 20-25 minute kind of experience that managed to get a budget and they blew it up. The coloring is awesome. The use of TV screens and lights are awesome. I thought it was funny that the school was called VHS.
Yeah, the TV lights were definitely cool. I love this glow in the dark thing we have going on here, especially with the title, yes, but also when he starts working in the arcade, we have that kind of 90s arcade vibes, and we kind of keep that color scheme throughout the movie. It gave me Moonlight vibes, just with how we can make these characters almost turn a different shade of their own skin color, and I really like that, but only in the coloring. Nothing else gave me Moonlight vibes. And I also loved all the chalk in the movie. I don't know if that's kind of cheap, but I liked it.
It helps tie in the actual kind of 2D CG we have overlaid on a few scenes. It helps kind of converge that in some kind of cohesive manner.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, I think visually this film is on its own level. It's very cool. The use of screens and their colors are very emblematic of the explicit messaging in the movie, and even in a wider sense because we are so inundated with screens. But that's a good pull. Moonlight, them being bathed in such a richness of color makes them look like completely different people.
Yeah.
My favorite shot and my favorite use of color and use of the screens in particular was that one shot when Owen, Justice Smith's character, walked inside and looked into the living room to see his dad, and his dad was just sitting on the far side of the couch just looking at him, and the screen was flashing on him. Very cool.
Yeah, there's a lot of scenes where the TV is reflecting on them, and they look cool.
So these characters were off. They were strange at the very least, right? They were obviously very exaggerated representations of letting something kind of displace any sense of reality and grounded kind of humanity that one should have. But their dynamic, Owen and Maddy, was weird. It was obviously weird, right? But Maddy's influence on Owen almost made me feel like there's this worry of peer pressure of individuals who are actually mentally ill with their distortion on reality and letting things like gender and being a mega Marvel fan and letting these things kind of displace a sense of personality, and they just are you, and how that affects others and how that can spread and confuse vulnerable people like Owen and I guess ultimately ruin their lives to some degree.
It's so exaggerated that it's hard for me to think that that's one of Jane's points to the movie or idea or whatever, just because of how long Owen was damaged for. I could understand being vulnerable as a child and being influenced, but you come to a point where you aren't anymore, or you should.
Hear me out. I took that in not quite as literal time passing in Owen's life, especially because he didn't really age all that much. He kind of had this old makeup on, whiting hair, but he didn't get the Leonard Bernstein kind of treatment of becoming an old person, or a middle-aged person, I should say. It made me think of these thoughts individuals will have, of how long have I been like this? And you can't remember a time where you haven't been into this thing, or like when you're sick, you're a few days in and you almost forget what it's like to not be sick. And then all of a sudden you're not sick anymore and you're like, oh my God, kind of thing. There's just this mega tunnel vision and distortion of reality on a time scale, I guess, specifically. And I'm not sure what quite makes me think like that, other than this acknowledgement that Owen has a problem, that Owen addresses and no one's listening kind of thing. When he screams and, it becomes very surrealistic. I guess more so than it was already.
Yeah, I don't know, because he's not even supposed to be old. He's supposed to be in his 40s. So they didn't make him too old because he's not. And if it is supposed to be a not so literal timeline, then I don't appreciate them saying 2 years later, 8 years later.
Sure, yeah, that's a good point.
20 years later, and just make it more surrealistic and commit to that.
That's an excellent point. And I will say on Jane's behalf that in some form they explicitly said there is no greater meaning in this. It's kind of is what you take out of it, which I appreciate a lot, because I think you have a hard time defending the artist when the thing is released into the wild, because it starts to defeat the purpose of art itself. So I appreciate that of Jane. Death to the artist, yes.
So here, I made something, take what you will out of it?
Yeah. And it's a conversation that's released because it is part of the conversation of what the intent was, no doubt. But the more important part is its meaning. And you only have meaning when you can find that, and it's in the piece. You see what I'm saying? The meaning isn't the same for everyone because the intent is irrelevant to your life. So
yeah, I don't know how I feel about that.
It's a controversial thing, it's like, do we love the Cosby Show still? Because, we grew up with it and whatnot, but, Bill Cosby did some bad stuff.
Did we ever love the Cosby Show?
Well, wasn't he America's dad at some point? Wasn't
that
know. The thing?
It wasn't my dad.
That's a little before our time. I get it.
Yeah, it's a little too experimental for me to roll with it. I don't have drugs to be on to experience something like this.
You don't love Harry Potter so much that that's what you see? You see the world through the Harry Potter lens?
No.
Wow. You need to get in line, girl.
I obviously don't love Harry Potter.
You're obviously stupid. One thing I loved about this film, though, was this revisit to the Pink Opaque in Owen's later part of his life, where he rewatches the shitty show and realizes, wow, it sucks. It served a place and time in his life, but it's not what he remembers. And of course, some things age more gracefully than others. Of course, right? A lot of things are very time and place oriented. The Matrix, Mario 64, Akira. But what did you think about the show itself and the effects it had on these two?
The show itself was cool. That's pretty clever and really neat how they did a show inside a movie and all these like Power Ranger kind of looking enemies and Mr. Nostalgia, what's his name? Mr. Melancholy and Moonlight and all these other names I can't remember. They were cool visually, but I don't get Owen's extreme fascination of the show. And I don't get how Owen and Maddy were supposed to be the main characters, Isabel and Tara, I think, and what that was supposed to be all about. And if this was a statement on questioning your own reality, and I don't know, it was just a little too much for me. It was a little too surreal, and it's like, what the fuck? What?
Yeah, I mean, I totally get you. It especially suffers when I don't think it lands anywhere in a meaningful, like, resonating kind of way, because Owen does just look back and realizes that maybe this point in his life was a little overstated and he needs to grow up kind of way. But we don't get enough character out of him.
Yeah, it's almost like he didn't realize he needs to grow up, but he realized that, oh shit, I wasted my life, and that's it. Nothing more to it. No lesson learned.
Because we did get this little hint of him having a family and becoming normal, raising kids, whatever.
Did he though?
I guess we don't really know.
We didn't see anything.
Yeah.
I don't know if I quite trust Owen.
Yeah, it's hard to trust someone when they see the world through such a fictitious fiction, you know?
Yes.
It's one thing seeing the world through your religion or your modeled universe after sciences and stuff, these things that we try to piece together throughout the years. I'm not sure if it's all that different than seeing the world through the Bible, to be honest, but he doesn't really land anywhere of consequence, ultimately.
So is this an LGBTQ plus movie? Is that what I'm supposed to be getting here? Or is it saying that this is not what I'm supposed to be getting from it at all? That's not what we should be worried about?
Well, I think that's a very good question. I think there's a few things happening there. It's sort of like asking, is this a Japanese role-playing game just because it's made by Japanese people, but it doesn't fit the traditional Japanese role-playing model, maybe?
Yes, but you can't compare Japanese role-playing people to LGBTQ plus people.
Of course.
Especially nowadays.
Of course. And yes, Jane would be the Japanese developers in this analog, but in their part of the LGBT community, I guess, and so it kind of inherently maybe makes this an LGBTQ community movie on some level, but not necessarily because of its widespread inclusion of everyone who shares this similar kind of personality disorder. Because there's a lot of people out there who, yes, have some kind of gender delusions about X, Y, and Z in a similar way that people let Jesus and his teachings be their personality. There's just this detached from reality that I think Jane captures here really concisely, actually, through our obsession with screens and maybe TV shows specifically, but just the essence of screens just in general and how they control our lives. I feel like there's this intent to speak to that lowest common denominator to make it extremely approachable for everyone. And I think it'd be hard to deny there probably is a specific flair of trans-oriented thing that trans-oriented people might find especially interesting in this film because it's coming out of Jane's experience as a human being. that might be true, but that's just, I guess one of the beauties of art in general and how perspective is everything when interpreting something, right? So I would say yes, but only tangentially and not intentionally.
Yeah, that's a good thought. And I wasn't asking because Jane is part of this community, or even our two main characters here are apparently part of this community.
Oh.
I didn't know that about all three of them, but it's not really important to me what part of the community they're from. Should it be? Should it not be? Is that part of the experience for this film? I'm not sure. Something like Moonlight, that's not part of the experience for the film. You quickly realize that's not even relevant to Chiron and his feelings and his thoughts. But here, I was mainly asking that because we have Maddy ask Owen if he liked girls or if he liked boys. And he just says, I don't know, I like TV. I don't know if that was a point Jane was trying to make by saying that's not even important. Why are we even discussing what I'm into? Why are we even discussing my sexuality? Me and you are friends because we watch TV. Or if that was, on the flip side, a more joke of, here's what I identify as. So I don't know. But then we have this remark by Owen's dad saying, is this a girl's show? Or isn't that a girl's show? And we don't have a comment on that. No one says anything on it. Again, because no one is replying to it, I don't exactly get the intention of putting that out there. And then we have a lot of transitions where we have Owen's character kind of transition into one of the other girls from the show. I don't know if it's Isabel or Tara. And there's several times where it beautifully transitions from his character to hers, kind of giving that implication that they are the same. One's a boy, one's a girl. I don't know. That's just the hints I saw in this movie, and I wasn't quite sure where to take them, or if it was even relevant for me to take them anywhere. But later finding out that Jane is part of this community now made me think there is some sort of agenda to these things. I did see a lot on the internet about how this was a movie on nostalgia, and with that being said, I don't think you and I can quite relate to the nostalgia of the 90s. We were born in the 90s. We were born mid-90s, so we can't really have nostalgia to that time. But a lot of people who are older than us are making comments on the nostalgia this movie is creating for them. And I know we've talked about before how loaded the word nostalgia can be, or maybe misinterpreted is the better word, because nostalgia comes with this feeling of sadness behind it.
Yeah, nostalgia isn't just remembering.
Right. So I don't think I can quite comment on that feeling, but if people are feeling this, I can see it with all the disturbing scenes, especially when Owen is getting old. So I wonder if there's something there for Jane, because I see a lot of people commenting on how this gives them like Buffy the Vampire vibes. I don't really know what that is. I couldn't even begin to tell you what that is, if that's a TV show or a movie or what.
Yeah, apparently the Pinko Pick was inspired by Buffy.
Okay. You've ever seen that?
I've seen an episode or two. It's garbage.
Okay.
It's a time and place kind of thing.
Yeah.
You've got to be deeply nostalgic to watch something like that today.
That's funny.
Same thing for Lost.
But I do like that people bring that up, because the soundtrack and the score in this movie definitely give me those vibes. The score is very soft and very dreamlike, but also kind of sad and maybe even super emo. So I like that extra layering. I did not feel nostalgic towards anything in this movie. Again, I don't know if I could, but I do like the throwbacks that I saw here. Like that big giant tarp that everyone as a kid played with. I wonder if they still do that. That'd be awesome to know. That was cool. And even those like big TVs with the giant backs, I can't remember the last time we had one, but I'm sure we did. I know I had a like small TV in my room. It was like a Mickey Mouse or a Minnie Mouse because it was pink and had a bow. A small TV with a built-in VHS player. That was cool too.
It's like 7 inches.
Probably.
Yeah, those small little square TVs were such a time and place.
Yeah.
I don't think they make TVs half that size now. The smallest flat screen.
Yeah, the smallest flat screen's like, what, 32 inches?
Yeah.
Maybe 28?
I just remembered, before I forget, one thing I liked about a Maddy and Owen exchange was when Owen asked Maddy if the Pinko Pick was for like children or something like that. And she was basically like, no way, it's way too smart. It's got way too much shit going on. I think that was probably the first sign I was like, oh man, this is about gatekeeping and letting these passions just drive your entire self. Because I feel like we see a lot of that in modernity.
Do we though? I know I see it on the internet, but that's not reality.
It is a part of reality, though. It's a very explosive, loud part of reality that can't be ignored, I think. It's like the innards of what's going on in people's heads, maybe a little bit more.
Yeah, I don't know, because most of it is fake. Most of it, people are trying to find a way to fake it, to put something out there. But again, I'm not a large part of the internet community. When you have a job,
Damn.
you tend to sleep afterwards.
So you telling these people to get jobs?
I'm telling these people to get jobs.
They got too much time on their hands?
You got too much time on your hand. Go get a job. Go contribute to society. Real society. Your community. Go volunteer. How about that? If you don't feel like getting a job, go volunteer. Because it's too much right now. And we can't be making this part of our personality. We can't be getting this obsessed about things. We just can't. It's hard for me to even envision that. It's hard for me to believe your words that there's people out there like that. I want to talk a little bit about the editing in the movie. Were there some scenes where Justin Smith didn't look like Justin Smith to you? Or was that me bored of this movie?
Yeah, I don't know. It may have been the bathed in light thing, but there were certain angles where Justice Smith specifically, I think one was on the couch and the other was like in a car or something, where it did not look like Justice Smith, yeah.
Yeah, and I tried to look for his freckle that he has near his lip to, that's a huge indicator whether someone's someone. And I just couldn't find it because of the angles he was in, and it was just weird. And I thought that was going to be part of the movie.
Yeah.
But I couldn't find anything.
I didn't see anything about that either, and I'm not going to look back at it, but I would like to believe that these distortions in Justice Smith's face or body are intentional and so subtle to kind of indicate to the audience those moments where you don't recognize yourself in some form and another.
Okay.
But we didn't have Justice Smith explicitly having those moments.
We also have this moment where Owen breaks the fourth wall and addresses the audience and tells us, I watched these tapes over and over again, but they never got old. And I believe that's the only time he broke the fourth wall. And it just felt a little bit out of place and almost felt a little unnecessary. And I only bring this up because things like this are some of the things that for sure will take me out of a movie when the fourth wall is being broken for no purpose.
Yeah, because it's all of a sudden like, man, now I gotta do a bunch of fucking homework. What are you trying to say to me right now?
Yeah, and we know, dude. We know you can watch these tapes over and over. We've seen you do it. I think at some point he even starts reciting the dialogue in the show. I can tell you watch him over and over and it never gets old. So I don't know. I don't know if that fourth wall break was intentional. And if it does require more out of me, I don't know if I'm going to do my homework and actually think about it.
I guess to be fair, I think there were a few instances of it. I think he even did some narration in the beginning. I could be wrong. I can't remember. This movie didn't really stick with me all that much. But fourth wall breaking is risky business, especially in a movie like this. Maybe not Deadpool, I'm not sure, but it asks the question of, well, what are you trying to say to me, like, big time?
It's asking you, the viewer, to reflect on something that is just being thrown at you. Like, are you trying to tell me I'm watching shit over and over? Because I do.
And I agree, it doesn't work super well because I think surrealistic films are inherently fourth wall breaking because you find yourself so much in it. Because it is kind of like what you're saying at the top of the episode, all about what does this mean to you?
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. What does this mean to you? There's nothing else that is even relevant to the conversation.
But now with this fourth wall break, you're asking.
It's a little more deliberate and direct.
Yeah.
I feel you.
Demanding. Yeah, it just threw me out. Fourth wall breaks are tricky. And the last thing I want to bring up is this basically music video we had in the middle of the movie.
So I think Jane is an obvious fan of Twin Peaks and David Lynch. And I think this is in Mulholland Drive, maybe, specifically. And I think these are very big nods to those, especially with the Basque of color. And the fact that we had to sit through the whole song, along with the dreamlike nature of the music itself. It's like, okay, this is, fitting this late Twin Peaks season 3 kind of Mulholland Drive very thing. I get it. And then on top of that, the Man in the Moon with Eraserhead. Got you. Jane, big fan of David Lynch. And then it's even hit a little harder when, this obsessive thing we used to have through the 60s, 70s, and 80s with TV and this fascination just with what TV is and the potential of cinema, and specifically David Lynch's fascination with everyone else's fascination of it. We all of a sudden have this kind of post-David Lynch movie with I Saw the TV Glow, and that post in the sense that we are seeing the effects of our obsession with these things. Not just TV now, because it's blown up many times over, right? With video games, the internet, the accessibility of it all. So in my mind, the weird music video that we got is nothing more than a big nod to David Lynch.
That's
himself.
A huge nod.
Yeah.
That's a 3-minute nod. I counted.
It was 3 minutes.
It was 3 whole fucking minutes.
It was a whole song.
It was a whole song. And I don't know. I'm also a divided fan of David Lynch's work. I said it. There's some of his work that it's too surreal for me. Maybe that's a genre I really have to focus on to understand, because it's too much. Eraserhead is too much.
That's not even that crazy.
And it's not, yeah. Any of the others, I probably fell asleep watching. Except The Elephant Man. Greatest movie of all time. Twin Peaks is fucking awesome. And I probably have to pull up his filmography to rank it for you. But there's some weird shit that David Lynch does that I just don't understand. Maybe I need to have done this podcast for 5 years and rewatch some of these surreal movies to fully appreciate them, like this one. Maybe rewatch Beau's Afraid, Dream Scenario, David Lynch's work. But I don't know. Am I too grounded? Am I just not experimental enough? Do I need to do more drugs in my life? I don't know.
No, it hinges on the things that you just obsess over and think about.
Am I not obsessive enough?
Not about the things David Lynch obsesses over. Are you making crazy lamps in your spare time? No.
No, I have a job. I told you.
Yeah, David Lynch had his job. He's retired.
Oh, okay.
David Lynch is an armchair weatherman now.
Oh, wow.
Only in LA, though.
Yeah, that was weird. Again, I don't need a music video inserted half into my movie. Or I do. Who knows? Did you like the end? Did you like him, 30 years later? He's probably mid-40s. He's an older guy. 40s is not old. Now I can say that. 40s is not old. And we have that weird ass moment where he screams and they're all singing happy birthday. He runs to the bathroom and he cuts himself. And then a TV emerges. Or however that went. That to me was just a commentary on getting old. That was a companion to Maddy's monologue. Almost right before that. Where she talks about time and how it's moving too fast. And I think she says something like, I was 19 and then I was 20 and then I was 21. Like chapters skipped over on a DVD. I told myself this isn't normal, this isn't how life is supposed to be. And just this commentary on life is moving too fast that I don't even know how to feel right now. Thus, Owen screaming. Not really knowing how to feel right now.
Yeah, it was kind of a literal representation of that, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was kind of saying this earlier. There doesn't seem to be a lot of convergence to any greater point by the end here.
Yeah, like this is the end. This is your chance to wrap it all up. It almost seemed like you started a new point and not wrapped up what you had to say earlier. Almost.
To be honest, I was ready for it to be over.
Me too. I was too. Because he was still working that same arcade job, right? 20 years later. So maybe there was a commentary on that. Like what you were trying to say earlier about how time just flies and you're not really sure on how long you've been sick or how long you've been healthy, how long you've been not sick.
How long have you been unhappy?
How long have you been unhappy?
Well, man, thank you for watching this movie with me, this A24 movie. I'm talking about it here today.
You're very welcome.
Do you have a budget guess? This is going to be a tough one, I'm telling you right now. Because it was made during COVID, so it took a long time to get done.
Oh.
So it was sort of expensive. Maybe a little more expensive than what you might think.
I thought $2 million. Because Jane's only directed 3 movies, I believe.
Oh, I didn't know that. This included in the third?
Yes, this included in the third. And I don't know how popular We're All Going to the World's Fair is.
It was just a little gym at the time.
It's not no gym at any time. I think you put it on while I was sleeping and I woke up to it and it creeped me out, fell back asleep.
It's also another movie where it should have stayed if it was, or it should have just been a short film.
The World Fair one?
Yeah. They overstay their welcome, these 2 movies, for sure.
I saw the TV Glow is definitely better.
Certainly.
We're All Going to the World's Fair.
Yeah.
Not even sure what the other one's about. Honestly, unless you lovely people out there are gonna request it, I'm probably never gonna watch it. But we have a bigger cast. We have a more known cast in this movie. It's a little bit longer, I believe, and if it's not, it feels longer. It's really pretty, so that's why I think I gave it 2 million. But I believe it's nowhere near more than that, if it's close to that.
Well, it says here that it was 10 million, which is crazy. Hereditary, 10 million.
That's funny you say 10 million because that was my original guess before I knew who this director was. Before I knew if they had any previous work or not. Like just coming off high from the movie or more like coming off disturbed from the movie. 10 million was my original guess. And then I had to retract. But that's funny. The Whale, right?
The Whale was 5 million, I think.
Oh, man. That's even worse.
And it only went on to make about $4.8 million.
Ooh, this was a theatrical release, right?
Yeah.
Limited?
Yeah, it must have been pretty limited.
Okay. I don't know if it came to our small town.
It's a little funny to see that budget on this movie because this is not the kind of movie that's gonna make money. This is a flavor movie. This is a culture kind of movie where we can point to this to defend A24 from being a corporate pig like Paramount, or I guess that's going to be a Sony property soon, or Disney or whatever, right? This is that kind of movie.
All right, I'll take it.
Well, over on Letterboxd with 185,000 people, they did not go to the movies. See, that's fine. It probably wasn't available. They weighed in at a 3.6. 3.6.
3.6?
It's too high.
Too high. I will say reviews I saw online were very favorable.
Yeah, I haven't seen many people low on this movie.
Yeah, people like this. People like this movie. They like how it makes them feel. But also, don't know if it matters, we're definitely younger than a lot of the reviews I saw. I'm giving it a 1.5.
Yeah, there's a lot I like in this film, but I just don't like how anything touches one another. Except the overall visual style. It's very cool.
It's not very consecutive.
It may be one of these films that comes from too deep in the heart of Jane and just doesn't hit with some folks.
Yeah.
Which is fine. I hope others love it, but...
Yeah, Eraserhead came real deep from David Lynch's...
Yeah, it's from the...
Like, disturbed first-time parent, right? Something like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
The baby's real creepy. So it's okay. Not for everyone.
Yeah, I think I'm sticking around to 1.5 as well. Like, there's a potential 2 in there, but it tries too hard and fails on some level for me to appreciate it too much. But yeah, man, thank you for talking about this movie here today, and thank you guys for listening to this episode of The Filmistines. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Remember, we post every Monday and Friday on public feeds, and every other Wednesday on our Patreon at patreon.com/Filmistines. Pandora, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. Remember to leave nice comments, thoughts, and ideas on our Patreon as well. Come subscribe. Come request a movie. Go rate us on Apple Podcasts. We appreciate all the support. Thank you guys very much. But until next time, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of The Filmistines. Thanks for tuning in and joining us on our cinematic journey. We hope you enjoyed the discussion and gained some new insights and perspectives on the world of movies. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform, especially Patreon at patreon.com/Filmistines, and follow us on social media for more film-related content. We love hearing from our listeners, so if you have any feedback, suggestions of movie recommendations, or book recommendations, please feel free to reach out to us. Until next time, keep watching and keep loving the magic of movies. This is The Filmistines, signing off.